Good morning. Tuesday, November 4th, Election Day. And as I was thinking my way in the minutes leading up to the moment when I pushed go live here on StreamYard, I started. By the way, my name is Michael Heath, and this is what it's a podcast. I call it MSH Live. Started doing it every morning this past weekend. If the Holy Spirit continues to move me to do it, I'll continue at 6 a.m., 7 days a week. And if you want to ask a question or make a comment, you can email me. But if you want to do it while the show is live, you can type it into the comments, and I may or may not be able to see your comment or question, depending on which platform you're watching the show on. But as I was preparing my mind and soul for today's show this morning, I was thinking about a number of things, as I usually do. And one of them is the election today and deciding whether or not I'm going to vote. And another was, if I'm going to vote, how am I going to vote? And I want to talk about some of that this morning. But before I do, I was also thinking about, as I often do, God. And I opened up a cupboard here next to my computer that I'm talking to you on, and pulled out some books. And among those books was this one. This book. You can probably guess what it is. It's a Bible. And the reason it has this cover on it is because it fell apart a long time ago. You can see that I've had to re-glue it. That's why the pages are sticking out there like that. I've had to kind of glue it together, the binding, to keep it accessible and readable. It's a Bible that's special to me because it was given to me by a very dedicated Christian man when I was late teens, 18, 19 years old. And burdened by the guilt associated with sin as a youth, because my parents were so good to me that they took me to church regularly, a United Methodist church, and I was introduced as a young man, as a child, to the idea of sin. And of course, my parents modeled the reality of sin for me: sin, guilt, and forgiveness. And as a teenager, I fell in, as many do, to doing the wrong thing, thinking the wrong thing on some matters. And by the time I got to my late teens, I was living with the sense in my soul and in my mind that I was doing things that were wrong and that I needed to correct. And so I ended up meeting my wife, Polly, and pursued her, fell in love with her. And she opened her Bible to me. First time I met her, first date we had, she opened her Bible and shared with me how important God was and is today to her. And I was drawn to that, as well as to her personally. And so we dated for months, and then maybe a year or two, and then eventually, of course, got married. And around that same time, I met this man who taught me, discipled me, to use a Christian term, as to why this Christian thing, this idea of God to Polly, was so important. And he gave me this book and invited me to go play basketball with him. And then we would get together like once a week, and we would read the Bible together, and we would talk about Christian things. So he gave me this Bible. It's like the cheapest Bible you could buy at the time. It's a Protestant Bible. I'm now Catholic, so it doesn't have all the books of the Bible that the Catholic Church's Bible has in it, but it has most of them. This version of the Bible has 66 books, and I don't know how many in the Catholic Bible, but like 20 or so more books in the Catholic Bible. So I hope my priest won't think less of me for being attached. I'm sure he won't, to this Bible. It's been with me since I was 19 years old. I'm 64 now, and you can see in here I've marked in it all through the pages. There's underlining and there's marks in it. And this is one aspect of Protestantism for which I'm eternally grateful, and that is their love, deep love, and regard for the Bible. And I picked up on that early and did my best to live into that doctrine of the Bible being of critical importance to my being a Christian on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm grateful, very, very grateful for my wife, for this gentleman, still alive, pretty sure, living in the South. I was able to get together with him in the last 5 or 6 years. Can't remember. No, actually, it's probably been more than that. Maybe about 10 years ago, we were able to reconnect, and it was good. I'm not failing to name him because I want to hide his name. It's just because I try to be careful about people, because the attack vector against people who I mention publicly, I'm concerned about it continuing to broaden. I mean, I'm okay with the FBI coming to my house, but I'm not okay with being party to causing the FBI or the CIA or local law enforcement or whoever to come to people's houses because they've had a connection to me in the past. So that's why I am reluctant to name this gentleman who, for whom I have tremendous regard even today. So thank God for that. Thinking about where I want to go next. So feel free to ask a question or make a comment. I might see it. And thanks so much for taking time to watch this live stream, or either live or on archive. It's always archived at michaelheath.tv, reliably, michaelheath.tv. Please let me know if you have any problems viewing it there, because it's not YouTube, it's not Facebook, it's not X, so it's not on a immense, huge, American big tech platform. It's hosted actually by my son, Jared, who runs a business called AlthaTech, althatech.com, ALTHA. Yeah, why don't I talk a little bit, introduce you to my son's business. So see if it comes up here. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Althatech.com. Let's see if this is the right thing. We'll get there. Be patient. Be patient. We're almost there. So he lives in Mount Airy, and he's kind enough to absorb me when I can't afford to pay him. It's a little bit pricey to stream video at michaelheath.tv, and he's been. I want to pay him. I don't want to abuse his business, even though I'm his father, whatever. But he's just so generous. As you can see here, your data is yours. It's time to take it back. Privacy-focused web management, hosting, and services for small businesses and ministries. Own the data. I love this little motto that he dreamed up. Own the data, protect the data, serve the data. I was privileged to be with him in his office. We rented an office in Mount Airy when he first moved down there. He was kicked out of Maine because he couldn't find an internet service provider 10 years, about 8-9 years ago in Maine. He couldn't find an internet service provider in the entire state of Maine for whom he believed he could earn the level of trust he needed in order to believe that the clients he was hosting globally, who are Christians, by the way, not pornographers or any other kind of diabolical evil, just Christians who wanted to preach the gospel or get their narrative to the global public on the internet. He couldn't find an internet service provider that he believed would have his back and wouldn't cave to threats, legal threats from bad actors. Isn't that something? So he ended up in North Carolina, where he's had a delightful experience there, living in Mount Airy and building this business. But I was in the first office that he rented downtown Mount Airy, and he wrote these 3 words. We were talking about, I was helping him, consulting with him about a vision for his business, for his brand new business. And he wrote those 3 words on the glass wall that was there in between 2 rooms in the office. He wrote, "Own the data." And when I saw that, I just went, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's the future. And so if you're concerned about Google or the big tech or the technocracy or any of that stuff, don't be afraid. There's no need to be afraid. Just check out this website, althatech.com. Take the time to reach out. There's so much help now online, on YouTube, everywhere. Everywhere you turn, there's assistance. It's free to help you deal with your fears. They're not irrational fears when you think about scrolling Facebook or YouTube or X. These are not irrational fears and concerns that you have. In fact, they're ultimately rational. You have to stop trusting your feed, your scroll. You have to stop trusting the sources that you grew up thinking were telling you the truth about reality, about the world. You have to stop doing that. You have to listen to your gut, listen to your conscience, listen to all that's good, true, and beautiful. Don't be afraid, and take the time. Turn off the entertainment, turn off the evening news, mainstream media, turn off Fox News, and dedicate some of that time to learning and growing into what the real threats are in this world. And the real threats are digital primarily, because in 2020, the empire, with the support of Europe and the West, launched World War III, and the battle space is the internet. And to the victor in any war go the spoils. So in order for there to be a war, there's everything, the conflict gets reduced to two sides, friend and foe. And the war is over when one of the sides wins by getting the other side to surrender. So we've been in a war since 2020. They launched it with the virus. Who's they? Well, obviously Bill Gates, right? He was a key figure, Fauci, even Trump to a large extent with his warp speed, all that. But think about how this war is being waged. People aren't, we've reached a point where the threat from nuclear annihilation is greater than it's ever been in human history, ever since nukes appeared in the mid-20th century. The threat is greater today than it's ever been, but yet we don't see millions of people creating movements like they did 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, against nukes out of fear. We don't see that. Why don't we see that? Because the battle space isn't, at the moment, the real world. It's not kinetic. The battle space is not in between nation states that are able to summon, build, and deploy armies and air forces against other nation states that occupy a geographical spot on Earth. But yet we're still at war, and you know this is true. You can feel it every day, everywhere you go, in your workplace, when you go to the grocery store, when you go to McDonald's to try to catch some fast food and you pay $10 like I did the other day for a breakfast sandwich. You see it everywhere. You feel it. You're trying to wrap your mind around it. And it's a war. It's a fundamentally religious war, spiritual war that's taking place on the internet. And in a war, to the victor, as I said, go all the spoils. So if the internet is the battle space of World War III, how do we know when it's over? And how do we know who won and who lost? Well, here's how we know. Think back to 2020. Who were the voices that made it possible for this war to begin? It was the World Economic Forum. It was the World Health Organization. None of us even knew who these people were, or these organizations, before 2020. But all of a sudden in 2020, the World Health Organization and the World Economic Forum are shuttering, closing down not just one nation, not just 100 nations. Every nation, there's almost 200 nations on Earth. They successfully stopped all economic activity and movement, for the most part, globally, on the entire planet. How did they do that? They couldn't have done it without the internet. There's no way. They launched a war in 2020 that they plan to win in 10 years. That's what they told us. 2030, you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy. That's what they told us. How are they going to accomplish that? Are they going to nuke? Are they going to use nukes? Are they going to use armies, air forces, navies? No. They're going to use psychological operations deployed by the most sophisticated intelligence agencies on Earth that have ever existed on Earth. Rome is jealous. Greece is jealous of the old Rome, the old Greece, the old empires. Spain is jealous. The old English Empire, of course, they're one of the powers that's making this happen today, the English Empire in Europe. But so the internet is the battle space. We'll know they've won if the cameras are deployed on the streets of Maine and America, aimed at the public, aimed at us. We'll know that we've won if the cameras are pointing in the opposite direction. If the surveillance is aimed continuously at those among us who take up public responsibilities to represent our interest, in other words, the interest of the sovereign individual citizens of the world, in each nation, according to each nation's rules, laws, religions, and order. We'll know that they, the bad guys, the diabolical forces led by Satan himself, have won if the cameras are pointed toward us continuously. The cameras in our phones, along with the sensors in our phones, continuously tracking, monitoring, and controlling our transactions and our movements, then we'll know that they won. If, on the other hand, the powers of this technology are redirected, turned around, and used to bring responsibility and accountability in the manner that God intends for humanity to operate, then we'll know that humanity won. I think we're going to win. I think humanity is going to tame. I've believed this since the internet first arrived. I wrote at the time and said at the time that the internet and computers are merely the most sophisticated and recent form of invention or technology that humanity has created. No different than a wheel or an axe or fire that we put under the control of humanity. We figured out how to start it, we figured out how to control it, and it made us warm, and it helped us to build societies. The wheel, same way, same thing. You name it, any technology, you name any technology. When it first arrived, it was scary. We didn't understand the extent of its powers to change the life that we were used to at the time. And it scared us. And we're still living in that period with the internet. We're scared. It scares us, this technology, as it should, especially right now, because we're halfway through the decade. We're halfway through, and it's not getting better. It's getting worse with artificial intelligence, with all of, but here's the thing. It's all branding. Most of it's advertising. It's a bubble. It's full of hot air. And you know what happens with a bubble when you take a pin or a balloon, imagine a balloon. What happens with a balloon or a bubble when you put a pin in it? It pops, right? All of a sudden it pops. And it's happened throughout human history. This one's going to pop. I believe it with my whole heart. Could happen any day now. It's going to pop. And thank God it's not going to, I don't think, pop in a nuclear direction or a kinetic direction. I don't see evidence that that's going to happen. Now, there's religious voices in America that are trying to spin up bloody conflict, that are in bloody conflict, but they're trying to make it even more bloody in the Middle East and in Russia and Taiwan and China and now in Venezuela. That those forces are all at play, of course, geopolitically. But is that the threat? Is that the threat? I don't think so. I think the real threat is this camera that I'm talking into and this technology that I'm using to affordably live stream to you this morning and archive it efficiently so that anyone in the world, anytime, as long as that file is accessible on the internet, can think along with me about what I'm saying. I think that this is both the threat, this technology, and the hope for our future at the same time. Both and, right? And the thing we're afraid to talk about, the subject matter, the topic that we're conditioned not to talk about, is the one that's going to bring us through, specifically religion and morality and matters of the soul and the heart. Things like love and virtue and truth and peace. This is what's going to bring us through. Talking honestly with confrontation if necessary and risk. Talking. Why is this the weapon that's going to work? To bring victory to the forces of good and the forces of humanity in World War III. Why is this the weapon of choice? Why is this the necessary weapon that's going to work? Because the battle space is the internet. And what is the internet? It's a communications, primarily. What is it? It's a invention that enables us to communicate faster, maybe to think faster. If you think about research and software and video production and audio production, what does all of that mean? It means that we can think a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficiently. We can talk a little bit quicker, a little more efficiently. We can transact value with one another anywhere on the planet a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficiently. That's why talking and writing, right? Writing computer code. This is the weapon that we must deploy and employ if we expect the forces of good, I'm saying, if we expect to win this war before 2030 and not be reduced, not be forced to live under constant surveillance with our Fourth Amendment rights totally violated every nanosecond of every day by this technology. If we expect to stop that from happening, then what we're going to do is we're going to talk to one another, right? We're going to look for the truth. We're going to love what's good. We're going to create what's beautiful. We're going to celebrate what works for humanity, for Maine, for our neighborhood, for our state, for our nation. I'm going to take time to go vote today, I think. And so what we're voting on in Maine, in little old Chelsea, Maine, where I live today, is a local issue to build a new town office and do it on debt, of course, nearly $1 million, 800,000, I think, spread over a bunch of years. I heard the number of like 80,000. Selectmen have said, okay, do it. It's an incredibly bad idea. You know, what's ironic about this is in the spring, I thought about serving on the budget committee. Well, not enough people decided to serve on the budget committee. And so there was no budget committee recommendation. So I decided not to serve. I would have been against this, no doubt about it. And so I will go and vote against it today. We need to be focused on, like my wife told me yesterday, the town of Chelsea, this little town of a couple thousand people, we need to be focused on more income and less burden on the property tax. We need to be focused on educational reform to bring the cost of the school in this little village way down. About 70% or more of our property tax, local property, goes to education. And that's got to change. Given how bad and evil and diabolical public education is now, I'd just as soon see it go to zero and see this facility turned into something useful that isn't destroying the minds and souls of our children here in Chelsea, Maine. But this is what we have to be focusing on, not going into debt so we can build a new town office for 4 people, some of whom are part-time, for this tiny little town. And we need to be making prudent and effective use of technology at the state and the local level so that we don't have to even have that many women working as clerks in this little town office. And there's all kinds of ways to do that. That's what we should be talking about and thinking about, instead of more debt and more comfy, new structures. We don't need that. We need efficiency. We need economy. We need more people who are focused on working in Maine. So anyway, there's a couple ballot issues that are going to be voted on. Question 1 is about voter ID. Not a perfect proposal to fix the problem, but I'm going to vote yes on it. I'm going to vote for it. And question 2 is about guns, of course. And, guns don't kill people, right? People kill people. Guns aren't the issue. So I'm going to vote no on that because it gives more power to the government to keep us all safe, supposedly. The minute you hear the government promising to do good things for children or keep you safe, run the other way. Run the other way from the government when it starts talking about safety. Because the last thing they're interested in is safety. The first thing they're interested in is controlling you, taking away your rights, making you into their slave. And in Maine, that's extremely toxic and dangerous right now because the radical communist left runs our government. They control the Senate, they control the House, and they control the executive. And they've been allowed to do that by the people of Maine for a long time, to have either that much power or close to that much power. And the reason is because the Republican Party is so anemic and weak. It's a waste of time to get involved with the Republican Party right now and it's been that way my whole lifetime, because the Republican Party exists to destroy, obliterate a moral vocabulary that is effective in confronting the evil of communism and the evil of socialism and the evil of the left wing of politics, religion, and culture in Maine. The Republican Party is just the Democrat Party light. Now, I see hints that might be changing. And when I'm halfway through watching the gubernatorial debate that the Republican Party spun up between their 8 hopefuls a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to finish watching the rest of it with my friend Paul Medore sometime soon, but you can go watch the first half of it and my comments and Paul's comments at michaelheath.tv. Just scroll down and you'll see it there. It's clearly marked if you're interested in seeing it. And I heard in even John Bush's narrative, and I'm no fan of the Bushes of the family, but I even heard in his narrative things I very much liked. I heard in the narrative of all the candidates things that I am drawn to. But it's so early. And there's so much moral passion and spiritual strength that has to be injected into this, into the politics, that I am skeptical. Been lied to my whole life by these men and women who assume power in the legislature and in the state house. My entire career, and I was an insider for 20 years. I was a lobbyist. I represented the second largest group of religious people in Maine. When I say the second largest, maybe the largest, possibly, but still a tiny, tiny group, a tiny subset of Maine people, namely conservative, evangelical, Protestant, Christian churches and individuals located throughout Maine. For 20 years, I was their representative in the state house. The perhaps, certainly, I don't know if it's larger in numbers, but certainly in terms of its power and its influence under the dome in the Maine State House, I would put the Roman Catholic Church above the Christian Civic League of Maine in power and influence. Of course, the Christian Civic League of Maine's power and influence is exerted within the Republican Party, and the Roman Catholic influence and power would appear more among the Democrats because of the old paradigm related to labor unions, which is pretty much died now, gone, dead and buried. But the influence still lingers, and the connection still lingers between the Catholic people of Maine and the Democratic Party. And then on the Republican side, you've got the sort of moral voice in Maine, to the extent there is one, and it's, in my opinion, pathetically weak. It's also, by the way, pathetically weak on the left, because the hierarchy of the Catholic Church is so unclear in its in the deployment of its voice, of its concerns, of its priorities in Maine politics. It's not tying itself clearly to its to the deposit of the faith within the church, and it's too much. It's not clear to people who are trying to sort it out. And the same thing is true among the Republicans. So what am I talking about? We don't. If Christianity really wanted to help Maine, we wouldn't still be talking about murdering babies in the womb. That'd be dead and that'd be over. That'd be over. And the same thing with sodomy, homosexuality, and all of this, and all of its derivatives now with gender. We wouldn't be fighting over those issues at all. They wouldn't even be issues. What we would be focusing on in politics, both sides, is fixing the cultural and economic problems that are literally threatening to turn Maine into a playground for oligarchs from away, who can afford to buy our lakefront properties and our oceanfront properties, and create a system that feeds and maintains their slaves, their servants, and allows for all the rest of us to die off and turn Maine into a park. The rest of Maine, inland Maine, into a park for their pleasure. And of course, this is part of what they want for us. They want those of us who are left to be living in their 15-minute city, which will be in Boston. And they want it, if they win the war that they started in 2020, then these devices or an implant will assure that none of us can travel where we're not supposed to, and we will be their slaves and their servants. They've said that this is all public. It's all, there's no question about it. So what do we need to demand from our legislature and our government? Well, we need to demand that they not obliterate Maine. We need to demand that they do their job, that they follow the Constitution, that they represent us, the people of Maine, the people who live here and who work here and who want their children and their grandchildren to live and work here and get married and have families and build a civilization that's going to last beyond today's Facebook scroll. That's what we all want, and that's what we all must demand. But instead, we'll just keep, haggling over kitty litter boxes in the corner of our classrooms, and we'll keep haggling over deploying pills, poison, to make sure that the sexually active among us can bleed out 30% of which who take the mifepristone poison, the young ladies who take it, they end up in a bloody mess on the kitchen floor. I guess you can't fully control when the poison is gonna empty your womb on the floor. So maybe you don't make it to the toilet. Sorry to be so gross, but this is it. So you're not going to respect the fact that if you choose to be sexually active, you're going to create another human being through that act. You're not going to respect that reality. Then it's going to happen, and you're going to end up getting a poison pill, and you might die. It's like Russian roulette, or whatever they call it. Only instead of one chamber being filled with a bullet, there's 2 or 3 chambers filled with a bullet, and you're putting it to your head, young lady, if you're choosing to give up your virtue to that man. You're putting that to your head, and there's 6 shots, and 2 to 3 of the chambers have bullets in them, and you're pulling the trigger. Why would you want to do that? Just so you can hate Christianity? Just so you can hate people like me or anybody who wants a better life for you and for your children and your grandchildren? Is that why? So you can prove that your pleasure is more important than what I just described, which is, by the way, I'm 64. I have 3 sons and 8 grandchildren. I can tell you, I wish I had, like my friend Paul, 40 grandchildren and 9 children. I wish at this age. I wish. There's nothing like it. There's no greater, deeper, broader, more real pleasure at 64 than those grandchildren who were here yesterday. 3 of my granddaughters were here yesterday. Just having them around at their age is an extreme pleasure that it can't even be compared to the act that brought them into the world, that brought their father into the world. It can't even be compared to the instant, that moment. It can't be compared. The pleasure that I felt having them here and driving them home last night. That's true. That's the truth. That's the truth. Planned Parenthood is lying to you. The Democrats are lying to you. The communists are lying to you. And shame on the Republicans for being so weak. Shame on the church for being so weak in pointing out this reality. Wow. So this has been so much fun. If you want to comment or ask a question to knock me off track here, please do. So I'll go vote. That's how I'm going to vote. I did want to bring up this article, and we'll start reading it, and I don't think I'll read the whole thing, but it's a good topic to consider today since we're thinking about voting and we're thinking about politics. I fear Maine is one legislative session away from becoming a sanctuary state. This was published recently in the mainstream media, and it's written by an acquaintance of mine, State Representative Michael Sobolewski, and he's a Republican from Phillips, Maine, and he's got a PAC and a political action committee, got all that stuff going on. So let's just start. Let me check this out. Let me make this a little bigger here, and let's see what our good Representative Sobolewski has to say to us this morning as we think about voting. This time last year, GOP candidates like myself shared our vision with voters, blah, blah, okay, so they went out and campaigned. Yep. And he says here, we're just one legislative session away from becoming a sanctuary state. What? Did you know that? God. As Democrats plan to repurpose a second regular session, and he talks here about the fact that the upcoming session, January to March, April-ish, is the second. It's called the emergency session. And he points out here that it's not supposed to be used for stuff like this. He says it's meant only for budgetary matters and emergencies. And the people of Maine deserve to know how close we are to following the lead of California, Massachusetts. Sanctuary style policies also mean that taxpayers could be stuck paying the bill for housing. Yeah. Just like we're going to be stuck for paying the bill to pull down those windmills and get rid of all those solar panels that are cluttering up our beautiful pastures. The legislature, controlled by Democrats, has already passed a bill severely restrict cooperation. Yeah, this is nuts. I mean, we need to be cooperating with ICE, obviously. Everybody knows that. This insanity that's being spun up by the old people in Maine, by the left-wingers who pretend they're not communists, to go against the no kings, Trump, whatever. What a bunch of nonsense. I saw those people in Boston on Saturday. So our state constitution makes clear the Maine legislature short session is meant only for budgetary. We already talked about that. Not intended for a second chance for controversial legislation. So I guess this thing was killed, maybe. I don't know. Bill 1971. Oh, they probably carried it over. Second chance for controversial. In the early days of statehood, the legislature sometimes didn't even convene. So his argument is this idea of Maine becoming a sanctuary state doesn't rise to the level of importance that it should be considered an emergency. And of course, I agree with him. This whole idea from the left about defunding police and going after law enforcement is ridiculous. It's insane. I've never understood it when they did that Summer of Love thing across the whole country. We need better peace officers. That's what we need. Peace officers that are trained to be peace officers instead of soldiers and warriors. Bring back, where's Barney Fife when you need him? Maine should reject becoming a sanctuary state. Yeah, of course. Sanctuary policies can prevent police. Yes. Dangerous gaps, blah, blah. Immigration laws are federal laws. Okay. Yeah. He said something down here that I wanted to get to. Blah, blah, blah. If Governor Mills lets this bill become law, I believe it will cement her legacy as being complicit in progressive social experiments. Boy, if that isn't true. She's made herself into the poster child. I call her Jezebel Janet Kills. Jezebel Janet Kills, because she is the Jezebel for progressive social experiments, if there ever was one. The kind of woke policymaking that puts ideology ahead of our safety. That is so true. And the entire Democratic Party is on that train now, headed helter-skelter toward communism. Look what's happening with this Graham Plattner as his campaign is obliterated. He's the Bernie Sanders Democrat. He's in, and he's getting a lot of coverage. 4 of his people have quit, and he loves giving guns to left wingers, making sure they know how to shoot straight. In my view, the people of Maine deserve safe communities where law enforcement can collaborate with federal partners. Those of us serving elected office should recognize how close Maine is becoming a sanctuary state and the importance of standing up for the rule of law. But folks, that starts with you. It starts with you asserting your rights as an individual Maine citizen, especially on the internet, especially with Facebook, especially with X, especially when it comes to all of this censorship and surveillance and nonsense, idiocy, insanity that's being pushed down from above, from the global level, pushed down upon all of us in Maine and in the West, and also throughout the entire planet. So I want to watch a short video here by Mr. Breedlove, Robert Breedlove. This is a short on YouTube. And let's see if we can put this up here like this. Yeah. Okay. Go here. See if we can make it bigger. There it's bigger. And let's just give this a listen.
They explicitly saying this is BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard want you to say this?
They don't say that, but they're saying, yeah, our shareholders want that. They go to these big meetings and, and I remember when it was like, we need all black movies. I remember when it was like, we need all woke movies. Hollywood works for BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
Crazy.
Fiat and it's a massive fiat system. And who else works for them is the U.S. government. Yep. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist and I'm not a doomer, but that's just the facts.
Well, let's see.
Hey, y'all.
Stop that. So, yeah, I guess I am maybe I am a conspiracy theorist and a doomer. I don't know, but all the conspiracy theories that we seem to have run away from when I was leading the Christian Civic League, they all seem to be coming true. So they're not conspiracy theories anymore. They're conspiracy facts. As each day passes, I get closer to believing even the most outlandish of them as I continue to expose myself to reality and to the truth. So BlackRock, if you don't know about them, you better learn BlackRock. They're the guy, Larry Fink, I think that's the guy. What a great name. I think he's now in charge of the World Economic Forum. How about that? He took Klaus Schwab's place, and his little business that he spun up on Wall Street is worth more than a lot of countries, a lot of nations on the earth, like trillion. I heard the numbers the other day. Multiple trillions of dollars is what he controls. And he's the king of the forces that are building the surveillance state. If he is allowed to continue to do what he's doing, then they will win World War III. They will win the internet, and the internet will be the control grid that they so hunger for. And we will be there, tracked and controlled and continuously monitored and driven slaves. That's what we'll be. We will no longer have our own minds and our own souls. They will own humanity if we don't stop Larry Fink and BlackRock. And one of the ways that we are going to stop them, that we're going to win this war, is by turning away from YouTube to sources like this. And in a future show, I'm going to dedicate some time to going to the home of this app, which is called Fountain.fm. Fountain.fm. And this is part of the growing, the brand new and growing world of creators and software that is hopeful and to a man and woman on the right side of World War III, creating the internet that's going to secure our sovereignty and our privacy and our humanity and goodness, truth, and beauty. So this is a podcast by Mr. Breedlove, who you just met in that short, and we're just going to listen to a couple minutes of the beginning of this, and I'll try to, if I get time, I'll try to put the link to this show, which is free, by the way, and Fountain is free. In fact, if you install Fountain.fm on your phone, they'll pay you to listen. They'll pay you. You got to set up a wallet, but they'll pay you in Bitcoin, in the smallest increment of Bitcoin called sats. They'll pay. I was listening to it this morning. They were paying me 1 sat, I think, per minute for 10 minutes or something. Now, 1 sat isn't very much, but it's something, right? It beats a subscription to YouTube or to X. They pay you instead of you giving everything about yourself, your very soul, plus your money, to Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or Google, right? Better to get paid. So there's a whole new economics that's emerging online, which is delicious. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. And and I started using some of this software. Some of it's clunky, but this particular application is very good. And we're going to be talking a lot in future shows about platforms like this one. So let's give it a listen.
Mr. Dixon, it's good to see you.
Good to see you again. Pretty wild times at the moment.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us from the other side of the pond.
Yeah, I'm here on my little island, seeking a little bit of sanctuary at the moment. It looks like the whole world's about to spark up anything right now, and it feels like it's very engineered as well. It feels like civil unrest seems to be the goal from somebody's agenda.
Yeah, peak divide and conquer moment is what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
You feel the tension in the ethers. Yeah. And so you have a nice little safe sanctuary. Is there any thoughts on good places to go in the world to avoid the chaos? Or that just be inward, get spiritually right with ourselves, or what?
I think so, but I do think we are having a global recollaboration. I do think that as we've entered into this multipolar world with a rising power with China and the world unifying around regional blocks, I do think tariffs really kicked off a reset. And the world seems to be moving into these blocks, whether it be the Gulf countries, GCC, whether it be BRICS, China, Russia, India, whether it be the ASEAN countries, and I think the collective West. And I do feel that the collective West has been fully colonized by a set of corporate interests. I call it the proof of weapons network. And the
Yeah, I'm sure you're interested in it now. So I'll be sure to try to include the link in the show notes at michaelheath.tv. But isn't that brilliant? The Proof of Weapons Network. The Proof of Weapons Network. If that doesn't distill what America has become in these evil days, then I don't know what is. The only thing that matters is if you can provide proof of weapons, especially when it comes to your narrative, right? Throwing F-bombs, being bold, being aggressive, being out there, being, branding yourself like Trump does. Proof of weapons. And then, of course, in real war, the nations relate to one another based upon their proof of weapons. That's why, of course, the United States just announced that they're going to start testing nuclear weapons again. And you get talk out of Russia, out of England and Europe with respect to Ukraine about nukes. Same thing with Israel and Palestine and Lebanon and Syria, Iran. Proof of weapons is what it's all about. Not for me. Not for me. I voted for Trump because he provided in his campaign proof of peace. He said that he wanted to win the Nobel Peace Prize. He still says that. But then his actions betray his words, of course. And at this point, he's not doing himself any favors in terms of his legacy. He's, in fact, risking everything in order to protect the Epstein files. He's risking everything in order to keep keep Netanyahu in power. He's risking everything in order to back up Zelensky in Ukraine when the world is moving on from all these ideas. We're all moving on. We're sick of it. Absolutely sick of it. So in tomorrow's show, I think I'm going to take on the Jews. I'm going to take on the issue of the Jews. That's everywhere and all the time now. Thank God, because of the courage of a young Black woman named Candace and a thoughtful and, I would say, kind and very productive podcaster named Tucker Carlson, and an up-and-coming youngster who's super smart and entertaining named Nick Fuentes. These forces are not going to be silenced. Full stop. I don't care how hard, how much, and how mean Mark Levin gets, or how crazy and over the top Donald Trump goes, like he has with Rand Paul and Thomas Massey, so that he can help complete, figures that should no longer have any power, like this South Carolina senator who's rumored to be homosexual. Can't remember his name now. Thank God I can't remember his name. You know who I'm talking about? He's in South Carolina, and he's Trump's golf buddy. So, oh, look at that comment. I'm going to show it. Good morning, Shane Mitchell. Good morning. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. And you guys, others of you who are watching, can comment. Please like and share the show. If you want to share the link, please share the link from michaelheath.tv, because I'm so censored on YouTube and X that I don't trust. I'm not going to spend any time trying to massage and make those videos better, because unless I see a big change in Musk's attitude or in Google's approach to things, I'm going to put my energies, and this is a solo thing. Nobody works for me. I do this all alone. So I'm going to put my energies into michaelheath.tv, because I know that's going to be there tomorrow, and I know you're going to be able to access it and share it, and I can speak my mind without putting too much of a throttle on my language, or my ideas. So God bless you for tuning in. I will be back, I promise, tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I'm having a lot of fun doing this. First time I've tried to do this every single day. The last time I got into frequency online, it was with blogging. I would do a blog every day. You can go read them if you want. They're at michaelheath.org. It's all free. I don't charge for anything. But I started doing that in 2020, just before the launch of World War III with COVID. And it was so effective. It traveled so far and wide and must have gone viral. I don't know. I've never looked at numbers, but it ended up producing a visit from the Federal Bureau of Investigation to my house, and it spun up a lot of other problems, got fired, a bunch of stuff. So I know frequency is important, right? Doing stuff frequently online. So never tried to do this as frequently as I'm doing it, but then the economics prior to this didn't really work. You know, it was still too expensive to do this kind of work. So you're welcome, Shane. Really appreciate you commenting and taking time this morning for it. Hope you enjoyed your coffee, and added to that enjoyment. And let's end with praying together the popular well-known Christian prayer, universally prayed by all Christian folks the world over, Eastern Orthodox, Roman Catholic, Protestant. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. Amen. And I am headed off to daily mass. Have a great day.